Welcome back to the Young Turks. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, and now joining us, someone we've had on the program before. We're very happy to have him on again, Reverend Jesse Jackson.
Good to be with you, my friend.
Welcome back to the Young Turks. All right, Reverend Jackson, you made a little bit of, you know what, before we get to today's news, I want to ask you, you haven't been on the show since the election of Barack Obama. Obviously, a bit of a historic moment.
A huge moment.
And I saw you that night, and you were very emotional. Just real simple. How did it feel?
Well, it was both the joy of the moment and the journey. The joy of, it was a huge moment. I was standing in a place in Grant Park where we were being tear gassed 40 years ago, protesting the war in Vietnam. And I thought about people around the world, many people too poor to have an internet, or too poor to have a television, hoping this guy, would win. And I could sense their joy, and I felt it. But then the journey, from the 54th Supreme Court decision to Florida Goodman turning 2 Jews and a black being killed, to Ronald Lutzer being killed, to Meg Evans being killed, Dr. King, lots of blood between that decision and that night in Grant Park. So it was the joy of the moment and the journey that got us there that was a bit overwhelming for me. It was really tears of joy. And I wished for a moment Dr. King or Meg Evans could have just been there, if just for 30 seconds. I just wish they could have seen the fruits of their labor.
I went to the Civil Rights Museum in Memphis a couple of times and stood on that balcony. On that balcony, if they had given you a flash forward here and said, this is where you're going to get to, despite the pain that you're feeling today, would you have believed it in your lifetime?
Yes, because we never stopped. We never stopped dreaming. We never stopped hoping. When we ran in '84, I was told running was absurd. Well, it made sense. We ran. They said, don't go to Iowa, it's wasting your time. Those are white people. Our goal was to get double digits in Iowa, and we did. So we did it. By 88, we won the big goal and get part in Iowa. We won Michigan. We won Vermont. We came to New York with 1,250 delegates in the lead. And so clearly, 20 years later, a president so able as President Barack Obama, well-funded, well-disciplined, it kept growing. I remember him telling me one night when we were debating Hart and Mondale at Columbia University. He said he was a student there watching the debate. And he watched the debate, he said, this can happen. So part of our mission was to sow seeds, and now to see the fruits of those seeds is immense joy.
All right, so that happens, and obviously we're ecstatic about it, and for policy reasons as well, primarily so for me, because for the Bush administration was absolutely disastrous. But now that he's president, are there things that you disagree with him on, where you say, hey, wait a minute, now I don't think he's being progressive enough here, or whatever enough?
He's facing real tensions. As he deals with the issue of torture. Mm-hmm. There are those who think that torture makes us more secure. And we think torture makes us less secure. But there must be at least as much focus on torture at home as torture abroad. There's more torture of people in the confessions here in America than there are in Guantanamo and in Abu Ghraib, for example. So it's a universal saying. We must be against it everywhere, not just abroad, but at home as well. The second thing, he wants to reduce the credit card scams. But then there are Democrats who join Republicans to connect the credit card relief with having guns in the public policy, which makes life less safe for us. He wants to negotiate down some of the home lenders, home borrowers' crisis. And the Senate voted against allowing judges to be able to modify home loans. And so now that we're into this season, there is tremendous backlash. He is putting a woman up for Supreme Court nominee, Sotomayor, who was just excellent in her qualifications. The fact that she would say, as a Latino woman, being bilingual, I have sensitivities in being poor, if white men may not have, of course that's true. Mm-hmm. That's what makes the court great. It's diverse, it's sensitive to have Latino woman, or black male, white males, in a room together, they began to engage in dialogue in that setting that would not take place unless you had that diversity. But I've never seen such vile attacks on her. And maybe it's because of her affirmative action position. Maybe it is because they're trying to attack her, hoping that by the next time another nominee comes up, they'll be able to get in a right of center person to keep the court balance tilted. I'm not sure why, but I know it's ugly and I know it's not fair.
Actually, a lot of people make the argument that she's perhaps too centrist, that not progressive enough. But that's a different question. But let me ask you this. A lot of the conservative talk show hosts are saying she's racist because she said that she has that perspective as a Latino woman in a discrimination case that might be relevant.
That's so absurd.
But isn't it an issue when the Fred Barnes from Fox News, Rush Limbaugh, Glenn Beck, they mention affirmative action. Here's a woman who graduated Phi Beta Kappa, summa cum laude from Princeton, got the highest award an undergraduate could get at Princeton, and was editor of the Yale Law Journal. What does she have to accomplish for them not to label her an affirmative action candidate?
People like Bush got into Yale because their parents were there, something called legacy points. Legacy points was for them affirmative action. On the other hand, when the courts found that there were patterns of discrimination based upon race and gender, affirmative action was put in to offset the historical negative. And affirmative action has been painted as a black program to incite white versus black. It's a majority, not a minority program. It's women, Title IX, plus people call it Title VII. So it's a majority issue. It's not minority, and it grows our economy. It grows our capacity. It does not diminish them. And so I am delighted that we elected President Barack Obama. But I tell you what, we have our hands fighting to fulfill the agenda.
So. Let's get to a point where I'm not sure we agree. Today you mentioned that we should have a moratorium on foreclosures. Am I getting that right?
Yes, until we can negotiate the restructuring of loans for the repossession homes. We've given away billions of dollars to the banks, and yet the money has not yet gotten down. So while the money is getting down, if it ever gets down, we're still losing homes, 2.2 million homes being a year. And 2.2 million homes into foreclosure means the next door neighbor's house loses value. That means that you lose the tax base. It affects schools, police, teachers, firemen. So while we are waiting to get the money down to the people, let's have a moratorium. Not to stop payment, but time to restructure loans and not repossess homes.
But Reverend Jackson, don't we always have foreclosures even when we're not in a crisis? Isn't that to some degree, although unfortunate, a healthy part of the economy?
No. When you have 20 million homes in foreclosure underwater, people paying more than the house is worth, and you're losing 2.2 million a year, that is an emergency. This is not ordinary. We've never had these numbers before.
How long would you have the moratorium on?
As long as it's necessary to renegotiate the deal. It's better to...
But doesn't that interrupt the normal market forces, though?
No, it's better to have a 6-year cap over 30 years and stay in the house. You put somebody in the house and devalue the whole neighborhood. And so it's not a plan to give a way out to not pay your mortgage. It's to establish the home, establish the neighborhood. And the quicker you can... Last week we had a deal at Rainbow Bush in Chicago, city groups. All people who have a city group mortgage meet us here. People coming in big numbers, we're negotiating the deal, which we tried to the Senate to get judges to be able to restructure the finances. The Senate cut it off. A mean-spirited act. When you lose in a given neighborhood 7 or 8 houses, you diminish the house in every block.
So who do you think makes the decision? You think the judge should make the decision on how to restructure? Because that gets a little messy.
Oh, not case by case. It's not case. Because the judge may say you're able to pay and you should pay. You're not and you should modify. Judges then will have the freedom to exercise judgment, what good judges should do.
And is there at what point do you say, all right, look, we had a chance to restructure, and this guy's just not going to be able to pay? I mean, it sucks, but he can't pay. When do we make that decision under your proposal?
Well, that's what the judges will determine. Because some people, a person on our staff is trying to make a transition in a house deal and has a buyer. Wells Fargo said, we will renegotiate if you were 3 months in arrears. They wanted to go out the back door and then renegotiate. That doesn't make sense. She has a buyer now, wants to sell now. The whole some arbitrary 3 month, you must be 3 months in arrears before you can renegotiate. That's irrational.
Let me ask you a final question then. Is Obama giving too much of a buy to the Goldman Sachs of the world and the bankers? So he, the houses get foreclosed on, but meanwhile Goldman Sachs gets the first $13 billion right through AIG because of a gambling bet basically that they made with AIG.
Well, I'm convinced that we need to, some of these big banks are too big to exist, not too big to fail. Mm-hmm. And maybe we should have reconstruction banks, smaller banks that are targeting urban banks, or rural banks, or education banks, banks that make beneficial sense. Right now we have put a lot of new wine in old wineskins without linking it to an obligation to reinvest in America.
All right. Everybody, Rainbow Push Coalition and the Citizenship Education Fund has their 38th annual conference on June 27th through July 1st of this year. It's in Chicago. Reverend Jackson, of course, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, friend.
All right. We'll be right back.